Welcome to You Matter in Business. Your hosts today are Ariel, me, and Miriam.
Your heart, your brand story, and your success because you matter in your business. Hi, and welcome back to You Matter in Business. And it's me talking to Ariel Faith today. Hi, Ariel. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. The sun is shining. I think spring has suddenly hit Florida, which is amazing. So that's good to see. Probably now, by the time we put this one out, it's probably going to be a hurricane or something like that. So that's going to be like out of time. But hey, so
Today is a good day, right?
the sun is shining. I'm loving it. Okay. So today, Ariel, we're going to have a conversation about fear. And this is a huge subject, but it
Yes.
all. So fear is one of the most common reasons that, in my opinion, that people don't follow their dreams. They stay in that comfort zone, and because that's where they feel safe. But there's lots of different types of fear. So I think we can touch on a few of them today. So talk to me about how you see women in your business that you support and guide from behind the lens, but also as a story brand guide. Talk to me about the types of fear that they experience and how that comes across.
Okay. The first one that comes to my mind is the fear of, I don't know if it would be rejection or being judged. To me, they're close, but not quite the same. So if I put my face on Instagram and I'm not a Vogue model, are people going to look at me and go, "Oh my God, who is that?" Do you know what I mean? Those kind of fears of, will my message be heard or will I be rejected based on external factors? And then, the older we get, we all know that we don't like what we look in the mirror as well as we did 20, 30 years ago. So uh, we have those fears that add to that. Now, you're competing with the 20-year-old influencers, and what you have, they don't have, but your fear of what you don't have compared to, which we talked about last time, is comparison. But so I think, is it fear of rejection that I'm trying to describe, or is it fear of?
I think for me, maybe the word that I would use, I think, in that situation, I think fear of what people think of me or what people will think of your client. It's that fear of rejection. It's that fear of ridicule, maybe.
Yeah.
Fear of being judged. It's very definitely that kind of, oh, what does her hair look like? Or wow, she's put on weight. Or what's she thinking? What was she thinking? Like, bags under her eyes, or
Go ahead.
but yeah, all that fear of just how you're going to be perceived by other people, and that can fill you with just fear, and it can paralyze you, I think. What other
And
kinds of fear do
I
you
think
see?
it's more of a female fear, because a woman walks in the room, she goes on an interview, and yes, this has changed. Yes, this is not as bad as it was 20, 30 years ago, but it's still there. A woman walks in and she is, by the male audience, immediately being assessed by her exterior qualities.
Mhm.
Um, and they may be able to push past it if they have a growth mindset, or they may not. They might be like, well, I really want a secretary that is going to be a little more pleasing to the eyes. And I have heard guys say this, not in the last so many years, but I have heard it. So we know this stuff still exists, even though we'd like to pretend it doesn't. But so some of that feeds that. And I think so there's so much external judgment for females versus males. Like, I can walk in with his 3-piece suit and his pot belly and nobody pays attention. Nobody cares. They don't think, oh, now if he's a fitness instructor and he walks in like that, well, maybe there will be a judgment. Maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. I don't know. So, I mean, but if they're in a corporate business, the environment, I have to turn this on focus because it keeps beeping at me.
But you're absolutely right there, Ariel, aren't you? So that there's, I don't know whether this happened in the States, but certainly when I was back in the UK, there was a big debate about women newscasters as opposed to male newscasters. Is that what you call them? We call them
Yeah.
presenters, news presenters.
Newscasters, yeah.
Okay. So people would look at the woman and go, well, she wore that dress 2 days ago, or that color really doesn't suit her, or what does she think she's wearing? That dress is far too short, or too, that kind of thing. Whereas the man can come in and do the same news presentation as she does, wearing a suit, wearing the same tie that he wears every single day, and nobody ever comments on it. So there's that difference in perception between women have to portray and men have to portray. So that where does that come in the discussion of fear? I think it is that perception of that other people are having a view on. But also we can be wrong in that perception as well, though. So one of my clients this week, we were talking about her fear of her being good at her job, and I said, well, where does that come from? What is it that makes you frightened? What's the cause of that? And she said that she feels when she walks into a room that people are judging her because she's a woman, because she's young, because she's relatively inexperienced, because any of the above. And she then felt that people were judging her. And I said, okay, pretend that they're not. Pretend that you've walked into that room and they're not thinking any of those things. How do you then go about that meeting that you're running or whatever? And she said, well, I'd be far more free if I didn't think that people were judging me. And I said, well, they're not judging you. You perceive that they might be, but that's coming from you. Do you ever get that?
Yes. Because a lot of times our fears are our own fears. Right.
Yeah.
And I know when I walk in a room and I'm talking to older women that have lived lives, and I just see these beautiful women that have experienced all kinds of things. I never think about how, they need to go see a skin doctor. I never do that. So it's easier for me to say, to embrace the age, because I don't look at wise women as rotten. I look at them as beautiful because they have wisdom and years that you cannot buy in a bottle. You can look like you're 20 all you want and have no experience at all. So it's a matter of if I was in a room and I know other women have a lot of those self-perceptions and they might have been heavy for many years, so they have a lot of issues around that, or they were like, I grew up being called fat. That was part of everybody called me fat. And I really look back and I go, I really wasn't. I was a solid kid, but I wasn't really fat, not in the true sense of the word. But my self-identity was wrapped up in that word. I was told I was fat, so I was fat, right? That seems logical, right? Why would I not believe that? But then the fear would increase because I have a false belief.
Yeah.
That everybody else in the room is going to think that. So then it feeds that fear. And what is fear in the first place? What is fear?
It's, I don't know what the dictionary definition of it is. It's an emotion that we get at that causes us distress, and is caused by, you see, there's so many different times. I mean, fear of spiders.
Is that logical reason we have a fear reaction?
So that's all to do with fight and flight, isn't it? It's to do with the fact that everything that happens to us goes through our chimp brain before it hits our prefrontal cortex. That it goes through the limbic system before it goes through the prefrontal cortex. So everything is first dictated by an emotion, and it's that, and it used to keep us alive when we were cavemen. That used to keep us alive. So we would be frightened that there's a bear about to attack us, and so it's that instant emotion driven by something that we need to run away from, or we perceive that we need to run away from,
or we need to be cautious about.
So fear of failure, it's sometimes fear of success, and that's a thing as well. Sometimes fear of wealth, sometimes fear of poverty, fear of judgment, fear of what people think of us. There's loads of different ways that it can manifest it. And then there's all the kind of fear of spiders, fear of dark, fear of thunder and lightning. And then there's the fear because you've experienced something in the past that
That's
caused
real.
to happen. Yeah. So it might be yeah, maybe you're run over by a car in a previous life, so you might be frightened of cars, or you might have been bitten by a dog, therefore you're frightened of the dogs.
So if we recognize that fear is an emotion and it has a purpose,
Uh-huh.
it has a purpose, and it's very good when this purpose works. If I'm walking in a city at 3 a.m, I should have a little bit of caution as I'm walking down that street, especially if I'm wearing extravagant clothes and high heels and I don't look, I look like something maybe I don't want to look like at 3 o'clock in the morning walking down a street. So there's a level of smart fear, right?
Yep.
That teaches you to make good decisions. So fear is not bad. It's just recognizing that it is. And what is it telling you? It's telling you that you are doing something new. You've never done it before. Everyone is afraid of something they've never done. That's a natural physical reaction to something we've never done. First time you get up in front of a crowd and speak, how do you feel?
Yeah.
Everyone feels fear. The 20,000th time you get up in front of the audience to speak, you might still feel fear, but it's not going to prevent you from doing the best job you can do.
Yeah. But I think and fear in those circumstances can actually be a really good thing, because it gives you that caution, almost, that you don't just throw caution to the wind and just go and do stupid things, because that fear keeps you honest, doesn't it? It just holds you back, reins you in just a little bit, so that you don't do something stupid, radical, that you shouldn't be doing. You're not going to jump off a cliff or
Exactly, because that would be dumb.
Unless,
Unless you have a bungee cord, and even that I personally wouldn't recommend, but
or you're a base jumper and you've got a parachute on your back.
yeah, exactly. And everybody's fear is different. So when you're talking about the kind of fears that prevent us from moving forward, what do you have in mind?
So
Success and failure?
failure of that what stops you from moving forward. So fear of for me, it's what people think of me, and I'm sure that's for a lot of women is that perception. So what advice and how do you advise your clients to move past those feelings of fear that they suffer from?
The fear of other people's perception.
Yeah.
I try really hard to help them see themselves.
Okay. How do you do that?
Through a camera lens, or whether it's through maybe talking through their business and what they're trying to accomplish with their business, what they're letting them see their strengths. And sometimes recognizing weakness does not make us weak. It just means you see yourself, because all of us have strengths and all of us have weaknesses. We all have a different personality, and knowing that allows you to work within your own zone of expertise, right? So I know I'm not a good engineer. I don't have the kind of brain, and I don't want one. I don't want that brain, right? So, but that's not me. I'm like the creative butterfly flying around the room, right? So I could want to be a rocket scientist, but I don't have the inner whatever to be a rocket scientist. So to me, that's not a limitation. That's recognizing my core value, which is the creative side. So I go to a field that is going to feed that creative side, rather than go to a field that I want to be in that I just don't have the natural aptitude for. There's nothing wrong with that, not having a natural aptitude. Now, can I learn? Could I force myself if I really wanted it? Yeah, sure. But again, it's those decisions we make along life that, so if I have a real strong sense of knowing who you are, and I think this takes a lot of time and a lot of work, I'm not gonna lie. The opinion of others doesn't really affect you the same. I can't say it
Yeah.
doesn't affect you. It doesn't affect you the same. I very early on, I was in my 20s, and I remember having a personality conflict with another woman that I really liked. I respected her. But for whatever reason, no matter what came out of my mouth, it was like a conflict. And I was like, I don't understand this. She took everything I said defensively. And I was just voicing my opinion. I don't care if it's different than yours, but she did. So if it was different than her, she saw it as an attack rather than just a difference.
Mhm.
And then he said to me, he said, you're never going to please everyone all the time.
Mhm.
So you have to work on pleasing your own inner values and your belief system, doing the best you can with what you have, with what you know today. And if somebody doesn't like that, that's fine.
Mm.
Just not part of your tribe, and that's fine.
Just take a moment for a slight interruption. We wanted to share some exciting news.
Exceptional women professionals often struggle to communicate their expertise. Rediscover, refine, rebrand women's retreats provide a transformative, intimate experience that help clarify your unique identity. So you are self-confident and courageous, stand out in your industry, and enjoy effective marketing.
Join us on one of these retreats. Go to arielfaith.com and choose your date that fits your schedule. Reserve your exclusive spot with a simple deposit, and then enjoy tailored planning tips and details from us to get ready for this inspiring experience. In the meantime, if you can like, share, and comment on this podcast, we'd appreciate the love. Thank you.
So that was a really useful piece of information I got when I was pretty young, because when I was younger, obviously I wanted everybody to like me. No,
Yeah.
it's not always how it works.
No, and I think that's the
I
lesson.
get it.
So what do you say to people? I often say to my clients, what would you achieve if you weren't afraid to fail?
That's a good question. Very good question to ask for yourself. So, what would you achieve if you weren't afraid to fail?
Yeah. And often for my clients, that kind of opens up possibilities of, well, what am I afraid of? What is it that really causes me that fear? And that allows them to then go, well, what happens if? And a lot of my clients, the fear of failure does hold them back. So if I wasn't,
Risk, if you think about it, there's a risk factor.
yeah,
Like, it costs money to start a business. It costs
mhm,
money to run a business. It costs money to continue to run a business. And if your numbers aren't where you want them to be, that is scary stuff.
mhm,
You don't know if you're going to be eating macaroni and cheese for the next week. I mean, there's some real fears around just basic daily survival when you are trying to work a business through. And that's why those mentors can be your best friend,
mhm.
because they have already been there. They have already fought that fear. They have already had those days they had macaroni and cheese with their kids for 3 weeks, but they all had fun. They made little macaroni and cheese castles. You just do the best you can with what you got. But you learn whatever tricks from people who have already walked it, and you see that confidence, and they're already ahead of you. So you're just like, okay, I'm gonna get in. When you're driving down the highway and you get behind one of those big trailers, they don't usually like you to hang behind them.
Yeah,
You take their wind, but you ride that because it's a little less. You use a little less gas. It takes a less energy.
you
So
slipstream them for a while. Love that.
you do. We do the same thing with mentors and coaches, but they're putting themselves out there to be that person who's already been through the wind, already been through the snowstorms, already had the hail all over their heads. They've already got the bruises.
Mm.
But they want this younger generation and the younger business people, no matter what age they are, maybe newer business owners, to not fight the same battles.
Yeah, it's the altruism feeling that they're putting out there. I've done this. I've made the mistakes. I don't want you to make the same mistakes along the way. So talk to me. Has there been times in your life that you can identify that fears held you back?
Oh, 100%. Oddly enough, I think the fear of success when I was in my early 20s was
Interesting.
I didn't even know there was such a thing as fear of success, but it really was the fear of achieving what I wanted that I was afraid of, because I had inner dialogue that told me I didn't deserve it. So it tapped into something deeper. But it really was, well, if I don't try to get an A, I won't. So I didn't. So it was, if I get an A, then I have, then you have a different level that you keep raising the bar, you keep raising the bar. So this like feeling like it's an odd thing, that the fear of success, but it really comes down to your self-worth, that fear of success, I think, anyway. It might come down to different things for different people, but it's like money. Some people are afraid to get rich because they're afraid they'll be taken advantage of. They'll be taken, all of the uncles and aunts they've never even met are going to come out of the woodwork, and they do. People take advantage of people. And if you're a really honest, good-hearted person and you succeed, you will meet some not so great people, but you will also meet some really great people. And you will know who they are. You'll see them coming because your fear will be trained. Like a lightsaber. Sorry. I teach you my Jedi tricks.
So give me some advice then. I'm suffering from fear. What advice, how do you guide women past those feelings?
Depends on what the fear is. Give me an example that I can play with instead of being so vague.
Sorry.
How about being afraid of being in the camera?
Yes. Or okay, let's be really specific. So you help women to develop their business, their own personal brand, not only through the lens, but also through their story, brand telling their story. So talk to me about, maybe they've got a fear of putting themselves out there as a personal brand, and it just not going the right way. Perhaps they're getting their messaging wrong. Perhaps their business is not flying as well as it could because they're not being clear on what their messaging is. Okay, so there's that fear of, I've got it wrong, or I'm going to get it wrong. So how do you get them past that, both through the lens but also in that wider storytelling?
I find that when you open up possibilities, so instead of saying, what if I fail, it's what if I succeed? Or what if I learn another method and I try that, rather than if I'm going to keep repeating the same method that doesn't work, which the world changes, the world moves, and we have to either hire somebody who knows where the current place is or do it ourselves, right? And I've generally been a do-it-yourselfer. I don't know why. It's kind of stupid now that I think about it, but I should have just hired people a long time ago. That's wisdom talking.
Maybe you could afford it back then.
But you try to do this, you try to fumble through, you try to do it low cost. And so you have to kind of like dance this dance of balance. But when you allow yourself to open up to the growth, the fear changes. I can't say it goes away, and I don't think it ever will, and I don't want it to, because I want it to be there when I need it. So I kind of think of it as like a friend. We all have one of those that kind of like, they're the doom and gloom little person. Oh, it won't work. You'll never make it. Remember that from Gloom or Glim or Glum, whatever his name was, Glum, Gulliver's Travels. Do you remember that? That's like, I'm dating myself here. But we all have that person that we know that kind of like always wants to put us in check. They always want to balance us out because we're like off here in dreamland. And they're like, oh, here's reality. You're like, shh, quiet. I don't want to hear reality. But you have the dreamers, and then you have the realists, and then you have the doomsayers. I mean, there's just different people that are in different places. So if we're only around people who don't have any vision, we'll never get out of our own gloom. If we find a world that is growing, they don't even have to be necessarily even above us, but they all have that, I want to succeed. I want to help you succeed. That community of support, that community of growth. then you will find it much easier to get real. And the fears they shift. They're not obstacles, they're stepping stones.
Yeah.
And okay, I'm afraid my business is going to fail. That's a legitimate fear for any business, because business is risk. There's a lot of things we can't control. We can't control the economy. Back in 2007, everyone in my industry went down. I mean, 50 people firms were down to the 2 architects left in the field. Everybody in my field basically had no work for about 3 years. They all survived. They all lived. They all ate. We all made it through. And then the recession came back, and it's been fine ever since. So, I mean, those kind of hills and valleys that have nothing to do with us happen. But what are you going to do? That was a time when I just started really educating myself in all kinds of places. So I took that down, that fail, because it's basically I lost everything. So it was a true fail from an exterior point of view. And I turned it into, well, what can I do? What can I learn? What can I shift to get us through this? Because, children need to eat, right? So as women, we tend to be more resilient, I think. We tend to be a little more, and we need to see that as a strength. Because we have children, because we have some of those other responsibilities, it makes us look at things a little different. But we have to achieve balance in the middle of that. So the fear, I think it's just a matter of looking at it differently. It's seeing it as your friend.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I don't think you don't ever really get over fear. Fear is always there. It's part of our physiology, like we've talked about. And it can be our friend, and it can be keep us honest. And I think that it is that way of understanding that we can rein it in, that we can really embrace it and make it actually make us stronger. So I often, with my clients, ask them to look at the worst case scenario.
Exactly.
So what's if you're walking into, let's say, public speaking, because everybody has a fear of public speaking unless they've done it for millions of years. But I think, okay, so what's the worst thing that can happen when you stand up on that stage? Visualize yourself on that stage. Visualize the 450 people out in front of you and the spotlights on you. Visualize that paralytic fear of you're going to forget your lines, or you're just going to completely freeze, or you're going to be sick all over the stage, or whatever it is that's the worst case scenario. But actually visualize yourself in that situation, and then visualize the best case scenario, that you stand up there, the lights are on you,
ovation.
You're feeling great, you're looking great, people are applauding you, everything that comes out of your mouth is wise, and everyone just thinks that you are amazing. And the reality is probably going to be somewhere
in the middle
of the two. You're unlikely to die on stage, or you're unlikely to be, suddenly the world, going to be hired for all TED Talks ever in the entire universe. So it's going to somewhere be in the middle there. But I think if you visualize the worst case, and then just say, well, okay, well, what is the worst thing that can happen as a result of this? And does that matter? If you do completely freeze and you're never asked to be public speak again, what does it matter? So I do that kind of exercise with people to try and get over it.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple weeks ago in one of the other shows, and we talked about the fact that part of that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, one of the things she said very similar to that was, inevitably whatever is going to happen, you're going to handle.
Yeah.
One way or another. You might handle it with tears, but you're still going to handle it. So no matter what outcome we think could happen, it's a waste of our energy to let that stop us, when in reality, we're going to handle whatever happens. That's an odd reality, but it's true. So that fear becomes not so, it's not a prediction. It's not a prophecy. It's not the end result. It's just a thought that's making you feel. That is all it is, right? So if a thought is making you feel, then a thought can make you feel different.
Yes.
So when we learn to take those thoughts, see them for what they are, and then use that to our advantage, whatever that is. If we are fearful and we recognize, like I just took that public speaking class. Was I nervous? Yes. Did I know I would be nervous? Yes.
Yes.
Was I willing to be nervous? Yes. So it's the word courageous fits in here, because courage is not the lack of fear.
No, it's
It is
doing it anyway.
doing it with the fear. It is. So it's about working on that courageous self that every single one of us have. We all do it for others. Somebody attacks your child. What do?
You stand up for them. Yeah.
So we do it for others, but learning to do it to ourselves in our own mind of fear is a challenge for some people.
But also, I think you've touched on something there as well, though, because you went on that course and for public speaking, and yes, you knew that you were scared doing it, but you did it, and you came home from that course on cloud nine. I mean, you were buzzing when we met the other day, and because done it anyway, you overcame that fear. You had the courage to put yourself out there, to make yourself vulnerable, to go through that whole horrible feelings of fear.
Spend money to prove myself.
Yeah. And you knew that it was beneficial to you, even though you were scared witless to do it. But actually now you can look back on that experience and go, wow, I was really scared of doing that. And I really didn't want to put myself out there. And I was petrified. But I learned so much from that experience. And I've made some really good connections with people. And I've discovered things about myself that I didn't know, that I've learned things that I'm going to be able to put into practice, that I've now got other people that I can collaborate with, that all those things that you've now, but not only have you got that from that experience, you can now use that in the future for other things. So you've got another thing that's coming up that's huge, that you're really fearful about. You can go, but hold on a second. I went on that course. I was scared about doing that course. I had all those horrible feelings that I know that I'm going to have again about this other big thing. And I got through it. I survived. It didn't kill me. I got stronger as a result of it. And I think we can use, it's like cognitive behavior therapy, isn't it? It's like, I'm petrified of spiders, but by introducing just a small experience of spiders, and then a little bigger experience of spiders, and then a little bigger and then having to hold the tarantula, that exposing yourself to, if you're frightened of public speaking, well, just talk to one person on that subject, and then maybe talk to 3 people on that subject, and then talk to 10 people on that subject, and then talk to 3 million people at the O2 Arena in London. So you can slowly expose yourself to, to those experiences, which then you can, I survived talking to one person. I survived talking to 3 people. I survived talking to 5. You can build on that and look
your
back.
confidence builds in your own ability to deal with fear.
Yeah, agreed.
Yes. Awesome.
So tell me just one thing before we go. Is there a fear that you wish that somebody had told you about before you set out in your business?
Is there a fear? I think the fear of only having $10 in your wallet is pretty real. I'm thinking about the early days when I started working for myself and I had 3 children at home, which is why I started working for myself. And there were moments that I didn't know where the electric bill was going to get paid, because I didn't know when I was going to get paid, number one. So there's that, I do a project and I get paid, but I don't always get paid immediately. Sometimes I get paid a month later. Sometimes I get paid 3 months later. I've had 6 months where I never got paid at all. So those things happen, and those things are part of the ups and downs of life. So I think I handled it well, but there were definitely fears around not necessarily failing in the business, because I always knew I could go back and get a job, but I didn't want to, because then I was giving up what I was doing this in the first place for, which was being with my children. So, and I was doing all that before COVID and way before it was popular.
So if you could now If there's another business owner out there who is suffering from that fear of financial
Instability.
hardship or instability, so if there's someone else out there that's fearing that, having the experiencing that fear, what would you say to them, or what would you have wanted someone to say to the you who was suffering from those fears? What advice would you want to give them?
I think it's important to do the math. That may sound really funny, but I gave a whole talk on this. But and the math is your friend also, and I hate math, but it's important to understand that if you are, let's just say you're a multi-level marketing company, and you have a whole bunch of products that you sell, and the price point goes from $10 to $100, right? So how many of those do you have to sell? Because your profit is not $10 or $100. What is your profit from all those items? So you have to look at how much do I have to sell of that product to make the income I need. If you don't have a clue what that is, you could spend months trying to work that business and really work hard. And in the end, you're never going to make the money you need just selling that product. You need 15 people behind you in the multi-level marketing to get to the number you want or need. So if you don't look at the math before you even make that decision to sell that product, if that's not a viable product for you to sell based on your time and your family's restraints, that's not a path for you to walk down. Does it mean you succeeded or failed? Absolutely not. I mean, you succeeded in making your priority better, whatever that was. If it was family time, you said, no, I'm not willing to sacrifice my children, my life, my few years with my kids to make money. And then really at the end of the day, you made a couple $100 or whatever. The time and the money have to match. The time and the expensive, they have to match. And you have to see your value in that. If you have 25, 30 years of business experience, that is 25, 30 years of experience that somebody who's just starting doesn't have.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's not about the hour we work. It's about the years it take us to get to that hour of work.
Good point.
So we have to look at ourselves as not a number. It's not an hourly wage. It's not eventually you put some numbers so people can have a tangible thing to purchase, but your value is way more than just your hour. Because what if you drove to the place? I mean, you have to really think about that stuff to make good decisions. And I think that's the key. If you make a smart decision to start off with, at least smart at the moment, then the fear, you've done the math, right? So you know that if you get 10 clients a year, that's all you need. If you know that, then you're not worried if in month 6 you've only had 5. So you know you're on course, but you also know what you need to do to get the next 5.
Yeah.
So it kind of charts your path.
Yeah.
And then when you have a charted path, it's much easier to walk on. When you have a plan to succeed, like I knew how many houses I had to do a year, pay the basic expenses. I knew what that was. So I could make a decision once I reached that point, whether I took any more that year or not. That was a decision I could make. But if I don't know that number, I might keep in that anxious spot where you just, you're okay. I didn't get a paycheck for 3 months. Well, I got to be smart with my money and can't spend it all when it shows up, right?
Yeah. So I think the fear of the unknown, I guess that's another one, isn't it? But the fear of the unknown. So make sure you do your homework. Make sure that you're knowledgeable. Make sure you've done the math. Make sure that you know your subject as well as possible. And that will dispel some of the fears because you're knowledgeable about it. But I think what we've said this afternoon is that fear should be your friend. Don't let fear stand in your way, and be courageous enough to do it anyway, despite the fear.
Yep. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, Ariel.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that conversation.
And we will come back again with some marketing ideas. We're going to talk a little bit about the fun of marketing and business. Most of us don't really enjoy that part, but we're going to make it fun.
Awesome. Look forward to it. Speak to you next time.
Okay.
See you next episode. After all, it is your brand, your story, and your success, because Ariel and I know you matter in your business.
Thank you for listening to the You Matter in Business podcast. Please follow, share, like, and comment. We would love to hear from you. This podcast is sponsored by Aerial Faith Photography and Enrich Life Coaching. The show notes provide more information on how to contact Ariel and Miriam and any guest speakers who share in our journey together.